Well, okay, I figured I could get the case off of this thing, but I can't. So, new phone with the wonderful 16 Pro camera on it, but I can't get it out of the case. So we're gonna hope that the lens covers aren't so goofy. Anyway, so just to start out our morning, I'll give you a little update. You can see the cattle over there. There's Maestro. I'm gonna get yelled at. Here she comes. Hello. Hey, I didn't get yelled at. That's unusual. Anyway, so quick update. Quit chewing on me, mister. Little brat. Little brat. Little brat. You. Little brat. See, that one's not actually yelling at me. It's amazing. Anywho, we have the greenhouse to deal with today. And lots of things growing on the side over here. We pulled up the satsumas that were basically coming back from below the graft, and they planted new trees, different trees, and then I'm waiting to see if I can get some grafting material rooted, and then I'll graft to the root balls and see what happens. In the meantime, just letting them recover and rejoin us. These are baby mimosa trees that are about to be put in. Do you mind, young man? No. Lots of baby plants that need to go in the ground. Would you stop? I love you. Stop it. Anyway, looks like I could use some planting time. Most of these things are ready to go in. This is larkspurs and onions and chives and a little bit of alyssum. This is all zinnias, and then as it turns out, paprika is really good for regulating blood pressure, so I'm growing the Hungarian peppers so we can make our own natural paprika. Smoke those peppers. And lots of baby plants, which I'd actually at this point have to look at the labels. These are daisies just starting. The mock orange that we foraged is gathering roots, so those will eventually be big bushes. The black locust and sumac are just waking up. I really thought that those were dead, and sure as heck, there are little bitty buds forming and greenery coming up. Thank God. I really didn't know if it was going to make it, but the black locust that was promised to some is finally starting to perk up. These are Amish paste tomatoes. We're going to actually plant most of those underneath the apple tree. I'm going to try a little experiment this year with the Louisiana sun. Because these are actually rainforest plants, and it looks like I'm gonna get poppies. I was dreaming about this in my waking state this morning, and like I can't get poppies here because it's so hot, so quickly. Just hasn't worked out. This is butterfly bush from all of those cuttings that I took, and there's about, I want to say probably about 17 of them survived. Did pretty good. The comfrey that needs to be replanted. This is basically, I dug it up and then cut off all of its roots and cut off all the leaves, and this is what happens when you just store it for a second. But yeah, those need to go in the ground. So I'll cut off all those leaves and put them in the ground. These are snails. So the premise being that they are not, we're working with root structures this year. So instead of planting them in those little 6-packs where the roots basically hit the edge and then start to circle and choke each other, this is coming straight out the bottom. If you can see those little jiggly roots on there. This is Tithonia torch, so those need to get in the ground quickly because they need to develop their tap roots. This baby catnip. And these are straight neck squash. So those will be going in the ground almost immediately. These are all things. We've got a nice layer of fog going on today. Then I used the winter sowing method for growing out some of these tree cuttings. The more difficult cuttings that have not done all that great are still coming alive. So this is peach tree for peach grafts. So I will baby these trees until they have scion wood, and then I will graft them to the already established peach trees that we have out in the orchard and get some variation out there. But inside here, I stopped by Brian's and when I was up in Ohio, and one of the many things that I foraged on that trip and brought back down here was that lovely deep dark purple redbud that he has in his front yard that's constantly getting cut because it wants to invade the house. It was planted too closely, but it's one of those nitrogen fixing trees that you can continually cut and it'll feed all the plants around it. And every time you cut it, that's when it releases the nitrogen, because it will basically, when you cut the top, it goes back and it self-prunes its own roots. That's how you get the nitrogen released. So it's grabbing nitrogen out of the air and fixes these little teeny tiny nodules to the roots, and it almost looks like a fungus when you pull them out. That's not bad, that's great. Just so you know, that's a wonderful thing. And then that nitrogen will be left once the roots are pruned. Those nodules will be available to other plants. So that's the beauty of that. But this is sterilized with hydrogen peroxide and washed sand. And then I dipped it in aloe. So I got a nice big aloe leaf from the grocery store and stripped it out and made my own aloe vera gel, and then dipped the ends and stuck them in the sand. The sand has great drainage on it. The aloe acts as a rooting hormone, and then periodically we go through and I'll spray it with a little cinnamon water just to keep the fungus down. That green fungus that grows on the top of your soil is easily mitigated with the cinnamon. And let's see, this is a very, very baby, God, why can't I think of the name of it? Anyway, it's a tree. These are the blueberries that I'm having a hard time with. I say I'm having a hard time because it's not growing the way I want it to. But yeah, they are going to be propagated. I will get them propagated. What's growing here is this curly willow that I brought back from my previous house. Stopped by and stole a bunch. They'll never know. And then lots of little baby plants that have been potted up that are growing in here. Mostly perennials. This is the lavender that was done from cuttings that have survived. We got our basil going in. Most of these, most of the things that we think of as annual veg or annual herb, I'm actually growing them to mitigate pests. Lovely bonus, I get to harvest them, but most of them are for pest deterrent. Little yarrows, lavenders, basil, dill, they all have more than one job. It's not just to be harvested, it's to help each other. And the strawberries are all, most of them are in the ground. These guys are waiting to get into tree rings. I just don't have enough time to get it all in the ground. I started way too many plants because as we come around the corner, and I've been planting them, as we come around the corner, this is all figs. And they are all doing just perfectly fine. These are mulberries in here. Another comfrey that has to get in the ground. I keep telling people don't plant them in pots, put it in the ground, but as I transfer them, I just save the teeny tiny roots that I can't sell and pot them up, and I'll put them in the ground once they start to develop a little bit, or once I get the time. But going through here, there's many, many more. The black willows are the only things that are not doing hardly anything. If they're going to do anything, I don't know. The bamboo did not take. There's bamboo in that crate way back there. It's interesting working with this camera. Sorry, guys. The goji berries that Jeff brought down are doing just fine. They're going in the ground here real quick. And these are more mulberries and Rose of Sharon all coming up. More figs. We have so many figs going, and they're different kinds of figs, so that's fabulous. But at the same time, where am I going to put all these? The black elderberry that I brought back, and then these are the Primark blackberries that we grow on the big things. You know, I got sick and tired of the mole slash vole slash birds. I don't know who it is, but they're taking a bite out of every strawberry. So instead of leaving these as birdhouses, which the birds never decided they liked, I could see where the drainage is actually working on this. These were all, I drilled holes in these things after I painted them and hung them so that if a bird did decide to build a nest in there, it wouldn't be a swamp. But then I left the lids on, so I've gone back, rethought the whole concept, and planted the ever-bearing strawberries in these. So these should start just tumbling out and have strawberries in them where we can get them and the moles can't. Because there's only so much I can do. This is 13 acres. Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out a situation where I get a harvest, not just them. You know, we don't try and stop them. And just try and plant for abundance here so that I can get what I need out of the garden, and Dina can get what she needs for all of her stuff that she does. She does a lot of freeze drying and jams and jellies and dehydrated stuff. Anyway, found a local source for compost. And we keep using it as soil, but this is what's left of a truckload. But you can see out on our beds, we've got it spread over all the beds as we plant them. And some of it got to rest over the winter. But so we've got, what is this? This is bush cucumber, which I've never even heard of. But this is bush cucumbers in this whole bed. And then I'm interplanting, so you can see where the onions are coming up. We put onions all the way around the outside to deter the moles and voles. And then in this bed, we have our, not spaghetti squash, this is butternut squash. So the big guys that are planted down there, the big seedlings, this guy, this little guy right here, that's butternut squash. But then we used radishes as cover crop last year, and then let it rest and fed the rabbits and the cattle with it. And then I just let it go to seed and smacked it all over, so you can see all it's planted itself everywhere. And then I moved some of that out so that it's interplanted. The radishes are actually very helpful for the squash. So there's that. And then went through, after we had weeded all of this and moved the radishes in, I've got some dill in here, also helpful for your squash. And then, so interplanting, so we've got dill in here, I've got some zinnias coming up, and then we've got buckwheat seeded throughout here. So we should get a good sized buckwheat crop in here. Again, we're feeding the rabbits And so it doesn't really matter to me that it's going to grow up and block the other plants that I'm bringing in. Buckwheat is harvestable at about 21 days. And it's only been in here for 2 or 3 days. It's already up. So seeded this whole thing, and the rabbits are right there in that little building. So really close by. This is our comfrey after I dug it out and harvested the roots. There are still roots that broke, and it is coming right back. So again, once you plant it somewhere, you're never going to get it out. That's a good thing. So decide where you're going to put it and just leave it alone. You can harvest it 3 times a year. It's good for absolutely everything. You can make compost tea. You can chop and drop it as a mulch. You can feed it to your critters. And it's not going to take over because it is a sterile variety. So fabulousness on that point. Over here on this bed, it looks like it's weeds, right? It's not. I've already weeded over in this bed. This is what's remaining is our cover crop of the white clover through here, and then we've got stinging nettles, which I will relocate. But I'm harvesting those. They said they planted themselves, but I'm going to harvest them and move them to their own bed because I don't want to run into stinging nettles constantly. But the mole, I planted lettuces and carrots in this bed, along with these Brussels sprouts that are still going. And the mole has come along and is constantly eating. But there's a carrot under there, so those are still in there. And then today we're planting this whole bed. We'll be getting the watermelons. So we're gonna do watermelons in this bed. We did corn. We're doing corn in that bed. So that has corn and buckwheat, and you can see lots of radishes throughout. We've put the onions and the garlic, so you can see the giant garlic on the corner there. But all of these things on the outside edges are critter defense. Harvestable, but critter defense. Over here we have the spinach, what I've been trying 3 times last year. Tried to do spinach, and the only way I can get it to grow is to start it from seed and then transplant it. Looks to me like somebody came along and chomped on this one. But, and so this is spinach and calendula right now, and then I'm going to put the larkspurs in here for our cutting garden. Each bed is going to have its own cut flower, or flower for cutting, basically, but bee attractants, all that good stuff. We're doing a Mother's Day, come out and pick, have a little lemonade underneath the trellis with the strawberries and all of that. I need to dig out these butterfly bushes that I put in last year. I healed them in. The ants, I think, killed that one. The frost has killed quite a few things, but I'm going to go back, cut that down, and then rehab it. Rehab it in another area, because this is production beds and this will get way bigger. Well, actually, no, these won't get that big, actually. Come to think of it, these are smaller varieties, which is why I went back to Ohio and picked up the ones that I want. How does that noise come out of that thing? Anyway, the clover is cover crop through here, and you can see where the radish is already starting to bolt. It's March. It's almost April, but it's March, and that radish is already wanting to bolt. It's that warm here. So the concept this year that I want to pay attention to is shading things so that they get morning sun, and then the heat of the day, they're actually in the shade. Because so many of these crops are native to warm areas, yes, but they're in the shade in their native habitats because they can't stand the UV, just like I can't stand the UV. We all know I'm crazy about sunblock, but I haven't. I started following a different method, I guess, of living when I got here, and I took off my glasses, so there's no filters. I'm not looking through any kind of filters when I'm out in the garden, and I didn't get a single sunburn last year. Because my brain doesn't think I'm in the shade. So my brain actually kicks in the melanin and blocks the burn, which is great. So it's just some things that I've noticed. Anecdotal evidence, obviously, but hopefully these are all perennials that I bought teeny tiny last year at a last minute sale from a local grower, and healed them in, and they are coming back full force, which is great. So I kind of weeded through here. I kind of didn't at the same time. There's some cardinal flower in here that I want to let it grow. These are tallow trees coming up. These I don't want. This is a weed, but this is about to bloom. This is echinacea. This is a sage, a couple of sages in there. This lovely guy, I didn't know if he was going to make it or not, but he looks like he's coming back, which is great. So I'm not giving up on these guys yet, but this was Mexican sage, a dwarf variety. I really want the big stuff, of course, but that's all I could find. But yeah, radishes all throughout here, and this bed is basically ready to be planted, which I think we'll probably be doing the watermelons up here again. We did watermelons in here last year, and I'm not as concerned with crop rotation in this system as I would be if I was doing monocrops, because I've got everything feeding. I've got so many things feeding the soil. We've been working on regenerating the soil, which was already good, but now it's even better. Now it's just lovely. So each bed has a corner comfrey, and then garlic and or onions all the way around. On this bed we put in the Jersey Giants for the asparagus. And it'll be a couple years before we really get anything out of that. Other than that, there are ever-bearing strawberries in here, and thyme. Thyme makes more strawberries. I don't know why. I can't tell you scientifically why, but thyme does help the strawberries. And then there's clover in here, feeding everybody. Onions around the outside of the edge. The one cabbage that made it past Calliope is still going. She got in here when I was up in Ohio and promptly took out about half of our brassica crop. Because she just loves vegetables. She's a nut. So we have to keep them out. Anyway, up here is all spaghetti squash. That's what's getting big right there. Spaghetti squash, and then we have the roselle hibiscus. So the red hibiscus tea hibiscus, because again with the blood pressure, we're doing everything medicinal in the garden. So this bed actually also has zinnias in it, so that'll be our cut flower up here. Also the giant French marigolds, not these old dinky dwarf things that you get at the box store. I want the ones that I had in Ohio where they're 4 feet tall. I want as much of that chemical protecting the chemical that particular plant releases into both the soil and the air. That is pest deterrent. Up here we have dill again. You can barely see it, but that's dill. And it took forever and then kind of petered out when I did it from seed last year. So we didn't do that again.